and can I start by congratulating very warmly my honourable friend from Central Ayrshire on securing this very important and very timely debate. I come to this debate to offer some views on it from a practical point of view, not from an ideological point of view. I very much kind of pride myself as being a constituency MP, and when I go along to my surgeries in Parkhead, Bayleston, Easterhouse or Cranhill, people are not there telling me how wonderful the system is. And when I go to the job centres that are left in my constituency, because the UK... Yes, I'm all happy to give way to them.
So quickly, and I'm also a constituency MP and take my casework very seriously. But it's not the nature of casework that people come and tell you when things are working. It's the nature that people come and tell you when things aren't working. So what we see are naturally a very unrepresentative proportion of the population. I just wonder if you would like to acknowledge that.
I'm very grateful to the honourable gentleman for that intervention, but as well as being a constituency MP that does surgeries, I also spend 2 hours every week going out door knocking in my constituency. And I don't find people regularly opening their door and saying to me, this welfare system is absolutely fan-dabby-dozy. Yeah. Now, this week marks 2 years since the Welfare Reform and Work Act 2016 was implemented and we saw some of the most punitive cuts that we've seen from this government. Now, some of these were a fresh round of cuts, and some built on the cuts that were made in the Welfare Reform Act of 2012. And I think this debate allows us the opportunity to shine a very bright light on some of the damage caused by those punitive welfare reforms, which are directly impacting some of the most vulnerable people in my own constituency of Glasgow East. And in the course of my remarks, I want to address 2 policy areas in particular. Firstly, the punitive benefit freeze, which means people are being left behind, quite literally out in the cold, whilst the cost of living soars. And then secondly, the medieval two-child policy and the abhorrent rape clause. Because figures commissioned by the SNP and put together by the House of Commons Library show that based on the Spring Statement of 2018, between 2018-19 and 2021, the benefits freeze will be saving an additional £3 billion compared to what was forecast for those years in the summer budget of 2015. The Joseph Rowntree Foundation said in November 2017, that the benefit freeze means that between 2010 and 2020, a couple with 2 kids will be £832 a year worse off. They've also said, and this is a quote, the freeze is the single biggest policy driver behind rising policy by the end of this Parliament. We also know that the impact of the poverty premium means that those on low incomes face higher costs as a proportion of their income, and those on higher incomes due to the nature of products and services. For example, those on low incomes often cannot pay for goods or services by fixed direct debit. However, for many things like mobile phone bills, energy bills and bank cards, companies only offer discounts based on people signing up with direct debits, and economic shocks like the breakdown of a car or a washing machine are also far more significant when you're a very low income. And I know that from direct experience, having spent 2 years working at Glasgow Credit Union. One of the most heartbreaking things about being in that job was people coming to you for loans to pay for a washing machine that's broken down or for school uniforms. And I think, sadly, that is the reality of where we're now at, and I'm disappointed that in the previous speech that is not coming in through lived experience, because we see that week in, week out when we do our constituency surgeries. So I think with all of these factors, the benefit freeze is an additional financial burden on disadvantaged people, and I think that the government must urgently restore the real value of benefits by scrapping the freeze. The second issue I want to raise today is the government's medieval two-child policy that would frankly make China blush. The idea that in 2018 we are turning round to families and saying, 2 children in your family, that's it, the state won't pay for any more than that, I think really does send a very strong signal from this place. And if the Minister is unhappy with that, I'm more than happy for him to intervene, and I'll give way. Absolutely not. Happy to give way to my honourable friend, though.
Also accept the basic premise that we have an ageing population and we actually need people to have children so that we can balance that. Yeah. And what we're doing relentlessly is punishing people who have children.
Yeah, absolutely. And that brings me on to the point about, the government has spoken very often about why they have this family test for policy. I don't necessarily see turning round to a family and saying that you can only have 2 children as being very appropriate with that family test. Now, the Women's Budget Group have said that the cuts to the child tax credits will disproportionately hit BME women who tend to have larger families. And I think that the idea that we would put victims through the trauma of having to prove to the DWP that their child was born as a result of rape really sends a very strong signal from that side of the House. It's certainly not one that we would do in Scotland. And I think that's precisely the point, because this legislation, which has now been on the statute books for 2 years, is genuinely impacting the just bit managing families that the Prime Minister spoke about upon taking office. And I don't think it's too late for the government to think again and implement a social security system that delivers social justice, fairness and, above all, dignity for the most vulnerable in our society.